Mark, you've been in recruiting for the last 20, 25 years, right? Since 1996.
Yep. I got in 1996, and like many people, I was a career changer. I actually started out my life as a writer and editor in the newspaper business,
Mhm.
but I had seen real strong evidence of that the whole industry just really going toward the rocks from an economic perspective. I started seeing signs of that as late as far back as the late 80s, but I didn't transition out of there until about 94. And when I got into recruiting, it was funny. It was focused on IT, but I had no technical background at all. In fact, I still have a vivid recollection of sitting in the room, in the office. My boss gets a job order for some like network engineer or something like that. And he's yelling out the parts of the job order and says TCP/IP. And I thought my head was going to explode. And I turned to my colleague, Monica, and I said, how do you keep all this stuff straight? Don't worry about it. It just comes to you. And so I just fumbled along. We were sending resumes via a fax machine.
Oh, wow.
Didn't have a computer. There was one computer in the office. That was by the admin. And so I used to, at lunchtime, used to go, there was an old website called Career Mosaic. Boy, am I dating myself, where it was actually an online resume database. It was free. I think it was one of those earlier like freemiumware to start to get you hooked, and then they're going to start charging. But go on at lunchtime and download all these resumes, because there was something that wasn't, all the other resumes were in folders. We'd have to keep a physical paper file on candidates we were working with. So it was really the Stone Age.
Wow.
And so, but I just learned bits and pieces of technical things and knew enough to sort of navigate my way around, but it was all just buzzword soup.
It's just so inspiring to hear your experience and also how deep questions you are able to ask. Like just, I wrote it down about troubleshooting, for example, or garbage collector,
Yeah.
or, you mentioned that you were reading Java white papers. It's just
Yeah.
so cool, right? Because there are all these recruiters who transition to IT and they finally learn what's the difference between Java and JavaScript, right?
Yep.
And that's already, better than most recruiters out there. But you are like going deeper than a lot of developers, right? You know more than junior Java developers about the technology, apparently.
Well,
So,
yeah, it's funny too, because one of the things that I found was that when a recruiter goes and gets intellectually curious, they will look something up, right? What do? They write some string into Google or some other search engine, and they get something fed back that was written by an engineer, that was meant to be consumed by an engineer.
mhm.
And so here they are making an earnest attempt to try to learn about, I don't know, what is DevOps? Like, what is RESTful web services? These terms just have these iconic recognition. You recognize them as a tech term, but you couldn't sit there and explain it in detail to somebody else.
Mhm.
And so one of the things I did, so our product came out as a SaaS product that just started out with this. I forget how many skills we came out with initially, but now we're up to about 140, skilled questions and answers in different, like 140 topics. But I wanted to create technology training that could, number one, make sense to a non-technical person, meaning it was relatable, but something that could be accessed, that was meant to be done within the confines of a recruiter's hectic asynchronous day, right? Who has time to sit down there for 60 minutes and just go through a whole module? Because a lot of times when recruiters go through training, it's training that is heavily dependent on, here's a term, here's a definition, remember that. And that doesn't really scale. But like, how do you teach them something where they can retain it and have ownership of the knowledge.
Mm.
Like I'll give you a good example. Like garbage collection, nice horizontal field in Java, but can get really murky. And so instead of talking about, you know, the heap and the JVM and objects and references, and you can get all that minutiae, I compare it to something everyone can get their head around. So I'd say, like, so in Java figured out something that was really important. At the time, C++ was very prevalent and it was a very powerful language. And a lot of people would build large complex systems on C++. But one of the problems is that memory management was entirely on the plate of the developer. You know, a program uses memory the way a car uses gasoline. So the developer has to assign, you know, allocate and deallocate memory so the programs could do their tasks and be done with them. But if they forgot about removing that memory, you could get memory leaks, and then all of a sudden performance problems come in, and now you get a big mess. And so the way I would describe, so think about the Java virtual machine is this big all-knowing entity that keeps track of everything in their little universe. Kind of like an air traffic controller controls activity around an airport. Air traffic controller is in touch with every single plane going somewhere, and they'll use a radio signal to stay in touch with the plane naturally. And this is kind of like the JVM keeping track of objects in memory with a reference. So in the real world, the technicians put fuel in the plane because they need that resource to go from A to B, and the JVM will keep in track with everyone through a radio signal the way a JVM in an application hands out memory so these objects can go perform their assigned task, keep track of them because there's a radio signal or a reference that persists while they keep doing their work. And when they're done, the reference goes away, just like the radio signal goes away, because the plane's on the ground. You don't need to talk to that guy anymore. He's safe. He's on his way home. Now they have the ability to say recapture any resource, memory, you know, fuel that can be redistributed the same way. When an object's done, its reference goes away. And of course, I get into the whole mark and sweep, how they've got to go mark the eligible objects before they actually collect them. But they can go and automate the entire process of handing out memory so they can do stuff, reclaiming memory so it can be redistributed. And so anyone who's, you know, even near an adult has probably been around an airport. They can picture it in their head. Like, oh, okay, yeah, it's relatable. I can sort of see the, you know, and so that way they have that recollection of the story they painted in their own head of their recollections of being at the airport and the whole 9 yards. So they can at least have a walking around conceptual grasp of a concept that itself can be super murky. Like if you get down into the generational garbage collection approach and heap compaction for means, like you can get way down to the weeds if you chose to. But for a recruiter to be able to ask a candidate just so they have their own gut level confidence, it's like, hey, so like walk me through how you would explain garbage collection to first year CS students who are going to have some concepts down with programming and stuff like that, but you're not necessarily going to go way down to the weeds. How would you describe it to them? Let me see how you do it. And so the recruiter, you know, just even though they are staying at a high level, they're prompting the engineer, okay, describe this, but pretend this is your audience. How well would you do it? Because you'd explain it differently to first year CS students than you would to people who are, you know, technical architect level versus, you know, somebody who's maybe entry level worker, but you're past college and everything like that. And so the way you would describe it is going to be different. And that way the recruiter could at least get a sense of, okay, how much command and depth did this guy demonstrate when talking about this subject? And they might not know whether everything the person said was perfectly accurate. You'd at least be able to get their own gut level sense. Okay, how did that sound? Did they sound really confident? Did they tell me things that I didn't know? Or did they actually explain it so well they actually helped me clarify something in my own head? And by being able to determine how effectively did somebody communicate something would give that recruiter the confidence, like, this guy really articulated himself well, made it clear as glass what they were saying. So this person has really strong communication skills and certainly knows something about the subject. So you can make that submittal with more confidence without you personally knowing everything there is to know, going way down to the weeds. Does that make sense?
Totally, totally. I mean, the explanation of the garbage collector is the best one I've ever heard. So very cool. And also this question that recruiters can ask: how would you explain to a first year student, computer science student? So that's very cool. I mean, it kind of positions the question so that you, even though you may not know the answer, or you as a recruiter may not be able to assess the correctness of the answer, but still
Right.
you see whether the person is confident in explaining the topic. Very cool.
Yep.
Very
Exactly right.
and yes, but generally the technical screening is really difficult. There are so many different terms, right? And one day you may be screening a Java architect, the other day, God knows who, full stack PHP developer, then a product manager. And
Yep.
there are so many different technical terms. And you
Yes.
building a product that actually makes it easier, right? As the tech screen. So
Yeah.
like to tell us a bit more about how recruiters can use this to increase their
Yeah,
productivity?
absolutely. So we have a very basic SaaS application that presents the questions and the answers to for the recruiter. And what we do, they're not multiple choice. What we do is we actually take a narrative explanation to the subject and we visually break it apart. So it's easier to identify when the real key terms are being mentioned. And we put highlighting around the really important terms, like, if you have, like say, asking what a class loader is and give me some examples, you say, well, first, the class loader is kind of the subcomponent of the Java virtual machine or the JVM, whatever you call it. And it, performs the following things and, loads objects in memory that the JVM is aware of. But in the explanation, person says JVM. Now the recruiter doesn't need to know what the JVM is, that it stands for Java Virtual Machine. They don't have to know about the inner workings of it. They just need to know when it's been referenced. And so our interface will show the checkbox next to each section of the comment, and the highlighting makes your eye kind of zoom in, so it helps the recruiter keep up with the conversation because it's just a free flow narrative. We're not asking what's 1 + 1 equals. And so we provide the question and the answer on the screen. And then there's a section at the bottom where we have how well did they explain themselves. And there's a 1 through 5 star rating. But we provide a definition of what 3 stars means, what 4 stars mean. And so between how much they know and how effectively did they articulate themselves, we're able to capture the relative level of insight the candidate showed while handling that question. But the really cool thing we've done, in fact, we were out of beta in the second week of September. Our 5.0 version is powered by our proprietary AI Verified. And so what that does, it actually scores and summarizes a detailed interview on the fly with hyper accuracy. And we've been really blown away by the output of our AI. In fact, the sophistication of the way it uses grammar to describe something is really kind of blown away. I actually have an example, if you think the audience would care to see it, but I also poke a little fun at myself because in one of the PDFs I'm going to show, I was the guinea pig. I was being asked the Java questions and I'm just responding. And so there was one point in particular that it kind of had some fun at my expense, but it illustrates how remarkably sophisticated our AI generative properties actually helps describe the performance of the candidate during the interview. That's really amazing. And the funny thing is, we were going back and forth internally about just that, and how the way they choose to our AI chooses to describe something that they're reviewing about the candidate's performance. And then my VP of engineering said something that just struck me between the eyes. I can't believe I overlooked this. He says, if somebody asked me to produce a document like this after an interview, it would take me 1 or 2 hours, and that's if I had no interruptions. And I was like, oh my God, he's right. It'd be one thing to have, basically a virtual engineering manager sitting right next to the recruiter. Imagine you're a recruiter, got a couple of years of experience. Imagine if you get handed an earbud to this this engineering VP sitting right next to you, and they're just going to listen to the whole conversation. And you sit there and you ask the questions and you get through to the end. And then the manager just goes and furiously just pounds out all of his salient notes that you can say, here you go. So our platform effectively lets anybody who has a technical recruiting focus conduct and document an interview with the same level of efficacy as a seasoned engineering manager, with 2 important distinctions. Number one, they didn't have to acquire any technical knowledge in order to be able to do it. And number 2, they can generate the report in 3 to 5 minutes compared to the 1 to 2 hours it would actually take a real engineering manager. So we're super excited about bringing this to the world. We've gone to, I think, 3 different trade shows across the country over most of 2023. And I can assure you that there's tons of people putting AI something into their HR tech products, but there isn't another product on this planet that actually is using AI to usefully screen and then summarize an actual technical interview. So we're super psyched.
Super cool. Wow, that's just crazy if you think about how the AI is changing pretty much everything in the recruiting space, from finding candidates through sourcing, screening, evaluating them. So it's just unbelievable. And then, if we kind of extrapolate these trends, we may also wonder, or especially people who are listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube, they may wonder what will be left to recruiters, like if some AI is finding candidates online and then another AI is screening candidates during Zoom calls. What is left for people to do eventually?
Oh yeah, you know what? No matter how much AI gets injected into any kind of HR tech, we will never, ever, ever get away from recruiters. We can't. It's the recruiter is the broker that helps get a seat filled. And I don't care if you're talking about talent acquisition, corporate recruiting, hiring full-timers for that company, or you're talking about someone at a staffing company who's helping fill the seats for customers. The recruiter is always going to be the one that has to broker the deal. Like we were talking about at the very beginning, it's like, if you and I are working together, you're a tech lead, and they say, Michael, what's changed since the last time we spoke, right? That other company actually come out with the offer you told me on Tuesday you were expecting something in the afternoon. Did they actually come through? Oh, what did it look like? Okay, so, are you ready to pull the trigger? You still want to hear what my client has? All that stuff, that never goes away. In fact, by being able to truncate that slice of the process whereby we figure out, okay, these people are actually should be on the short list to be considered for an on-site role. If we can truncate that and get that done on number one, on first contact, and then resolutely say, okay, this person's earned the time to be with the hiring manager, we could actually see people get hired in much less time and far less dependency on the manager and or their leads doing 100% of the technical due diligence. Think of how much time gets wasted when you have to have the recruiters sending resumes to the managers and their leads. for resume review, right?
Mm.
And they're all busy anyways, you know, they'll get around to it and they'll probably just read CVs rapid fire, just as like, and we all know that a manager's goal in reading a resume in the first 5 to 10 seconds is to figure out, am I going to go reading past 10 seconds? Like, do I need to keep reading this, right? Their goal is to get to a decision up or down as quickly as possible and move on to the next one and then repeat, right? And so then they try to shortlist the people they're going to want to get on the phone with. And then that takes time. And so you could easily consume a week of calendar time just doing the resumes in the inbox, feedback for who you want to phone screen. That dance could consume an entire week, right? But if the recruiter had the ability to reliably do that initial first pass, so that, okay, everyone who survives here, we're going to say it warrants the time of a manager. In fact, one of our best case studies early on, this was with a corporate client, and they were hired a lot of, as a .NET shop, hired a lot of very junior people, and they were killing the managers and their leads with resumes and phone screens. And so they piloted us, and in a 2-month period, they had 2 junior recruiters who had, what I was told, between 1 to 2 years of experience. And one of the team leads went into the tool and said, okay, I am going to put together a .NET interview. You know, they pick, you know, C#, .NET Framework, etc. And said, if anyone gets through this interview and does well, we want to talk to them. So what happened was they, that led to managers do, well, they screened like 155 engineers, but the managers cherry picked 40 candidates to interview formally. They made 28 offers.
Wow.
A 70% interview offer ratio. So what really was ironic was that taking a process I perfected over 20 years that I baked into a SaaS platform, 2 rookies from a client did 2 percentage points better than me, because when I was doing my consulting at Pega, I had a 68% interview offer ratio, you know, 85 candidates, 58 offers. 2 rookies using my product with my process baked in did a 70% interview offer ratio.
Wow. Wow.
You know?
It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. And so, but we're super excited about how our AI is going to not knock recruiters out of the process. It's going to empower them to be able to get managers. Like, listen, Mr. Manager, we know you're not fans of reading a gazillion resumes just so you can figure out who you might be interested in speaking to on phone, right? If we could reliably be the surrogate for you on that front end, so we identify, here's a short list of people who absolutely are worth your team's time, and then you figure out which person you want to hire, and take all of that stuff off your plate. We'll have a much more laser focused recruiting process. It'll be shorter. You'll wind up getting better results. And a lot of times you'll wind up kicking out people who might have warranted a phone screen because they have a strong resume, and included people who were deserving, but their resume didn't suggest it. You know, I remember one time when in my agency days, it was a major telco. I won't share their name, but this one group had almost smug pride at their knockout ratio, that their knockout ratio is like 95% from all the sources they used. And I get this kid now, they're looking for a C++ Unix person with real high performance requirements. And I see this resume, and my heart sank for him, because this was 2006. And his resume said that he hadn't written in C++ in 4 years, you know, and it's like, it was obvious, like his last coding job was 4 years prior. And I was like, oh man, this poor guy, you know, post.com meltdown. He stayed at these, you know, kind of engineering, hardware centric firms. He missed the web altogether, poor guy. They said, you know what? I sound like one of our customers. Like, no, I said, this guy took the time to read our job posting. He took the time to apply. I'm going to call him up. And so I did. And I was able to go through a very detailed interview on C++ that he did really, really well. And so I was able to present him to the client is basically like, yeah, I know what you're going to say when you see this resume, because I thought the same thing. But let me tell you what we talked about. And I wound up getting an interview for this candidate. And I actually, if you let me share my screen, I actually kept the content of the email I actually sent.
Yeah, please.
Okay, let's see. So this is what I sent. Let's see if I can make it a little bit bigger. You know, but you know, I assumed his C++ knowledge was going to be rusty, but I was wrong. You know, it started with some softballs, how memory is allocated, deallocated C++, access privilege, handle them without blinking. You got the function overload and overriding, copy constructors called. He's nailing them as well. Started to dig a little deeper, virtual destructors, abstract base classes. And I just kind of gave a breakdown of what we talked about. You know, why do you need to write your own copy constructor assignment operator when you're dealing with class with dynamically allocated memory? He's nailing this code. And then right at the end, I'm able to say, like, I'm convinced this guy is worth your time.
Very cool. So this is the content of the message that you sent to the manager, right?
Content of the message I sent in 2006 to that client, the telecom client. And so I was able to get him visibility in spite of his resume, but it took me to construct an evidence-based argument like this before the manager, because if I just sent the resume, the manager would have laughed in my face. I was like, well, yeah, I know what you're going to see when you say I know how you're going to react to the resume, because that's how I did. But then I actually dug in and talked to the guy.
Yeah, you know? Wonderful. I mean, you sold the candidate really well. You sold him really well, and the message was really advanced. People watching this on YouTube will see. Listeners on podcast should go to YouTube to see the screenshot, but it's very cool. Thanks for sharing. Which, by the way, reminds me, we should also organize the other session where you show us how to use the software tool.
Absolutely. Could I show one more thing? This is an actual document from the app. So let me kill this. But this is come on, let's see the Zoom thing. Okay. So it writes the entire summary of the interview itself. I did insert the underlinings just to pull the eye in, but you can see under request. So this is in our system when you're using the application. So there's a gray background in the UI, but it's structured this way. So we just take the entire narrative answer, but we break it apart in sections. So each checkbox is basically one topic. But take a look at the nuanced way the system, the AI, is using to describe the efficacy of the candidate's answer. In this case, it was me.
And all these tick boxes, it's just unbelievable. And the commentary below it. Wow.
This is so our AI is checking the boxes in the UI itself, and it's then selecting the 1 through 5 star rating. But then the most important thing, it's writing an analysis. And so here it dings me because I forgot to reference the fact that finalize is not guaranteed to run during garbage collection, because finalized method only exists in cases some non-Java resource associated with it has to be tidied up before the JVM actually does garbage collection. But here's the thing that really got my goat. When we're talking about virtual functions, start reading with however.
However, while the response was accurate, it could have been more concise and straight to the point. Wow,
He's
interesting.
calling me out. He's calling me out for being
Wow,
long-winded.
wow, that's unbelievable.
So it's like,
You
I mean,
didn't
so
provide contrasting viewpoints. Oh wow. Okay.
so
That's just crazy.
yeah,
Coming back
and so
to
to be able to push one button,
hmm.
generate something like this. I mean, this is like the answers to the prayers for like tech recruiters everywhere. It's like, most people know enough to be dangerous. No one is mule stubborn and rock stupid enough for me, like me, to just decide, hey, I'm going to go spend the next 20 years going through concertina wire and technical terminology to learn this stuff so I can actually have a conversation. But I did apply that to what I'm doing here, and we're so excited about our AI is actually going to really move the needle and help make recruiters that much more effective in their jobs, because we need them to broker the deals, but now they can help be part of the surrogate for the manager and screening who is worth the face time of this institution, and we can just shift some of the responsibility where it's used to be exclusively on the manager, but now we can offload some of that. I mean, the hiring decision has to be the manager, but figuring out the short list of the 5 finalists who are worthy, let's get them in front of the interview panel, and then we'll make a good decision on who to hire. But we didn't have to, hack through tons and tons of resumes and tons of phone screens just to find those 6. We have a process now where we can find those 6 based on having one phone call up front, and then we just put them in the process thereafter. So we're pretty excited.
Super cool. Yeah. So recruiters will shift to brokering the the candidates and being the partners in kind of selling the opportunities. So that's very cool.
Yeah. We'll never get rid of recruiters ever.
Yeah. Wonderful. So we will also need to organize the other call where we probably invite some more people to join us live, where you showcase the product.
Oh yeah, we'll be on a live, so they'll get to see our AI operating.
Yeah, that would be super cool.
Yeah,
That would be fun. Okay,
love
so
it.
we will organize it separately. I'll speak with Barbara and we will pull it off.
Okay,
Wonderful.
awesome.
Cool.
All
So
right, Michael,
before we wrap it up, is there anything you would like to advise to people who are transitioning to technical recruiting, or maybe have been doing some recruiting for 1-2 years and are not on the level you are at just yet?
Well, just not to, don't get intimidated by somebody who has a lot of technical knowledge. If they're engaged with you, it's because they're asking you to do your thing, like help me find a new job, or and so even though you have different pools of knowledge, you're no less, there's no reason for you to think about, oh, they're on some high level and I'm not, because you can do things that they're not able to do.
Yeah.
And so just, get focused on understanding what sort of technical deliverables this person going to ask to hit, and then understand questions you can ask them that will give you confidence that this person knows what they're talking about, because you're not going to know the content of everything they say in a deep technical answer, but as long as you're asking questions that have the right focus, and that's why I fall back on that, like, what's a deliverable this person's going to have to hit in the first 90 plus days of this job? Great. Now that you've identified that deliverable, what's a question I can ask that's going to tell me up or down? Do they know what they're talking about? And if you stay focused on requirements and deliverables and competence to produce them, you'll always be asking questions that are meaningful without you having to be some technical expert.
Yeah. Very cool. Great advice. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that. Wonderful. Okay, and where can people find more about you? I will include LinkedIn, of course.
You can find my LinkedIn profile. It has a lot of public comments about me, but on techstream.com, people have the ability. We actually, even though we're a B2B company, we actually let people purchase a license of our product right online. In fact, we're giving 14 days free, so someone could kick the tires, see if they actually like it before they're asked to to pay for it. So I'd love to welcome people who wanted to give it a shot. They can try it out for free, see if it works for them, and if so, great. If not, we'll still part as friends and wake up another day.
Awesome. So I'll include these links in the episode show notes and on YouTube in the comments. Wonderful. And we will catch up with the screen share episode. So we will organize some live sessions.
I'm looking forward to it. All right, Michael. Hey, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot for sharing all these insights. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
All right. Thanks so much.